Holy Spirit, come with us and be with us, help us, give us wisdom, knowledge to understand what the professor will guide us today. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, I'm going to share the screen and hopefully more people will come in. Um, like yesterday, I would try to break it into two parts because it's hard to do 2 hours straight recording as well. So we're going to try to have a maybe 15-minute break in between, and then we'll finish with part two. But with all the lectures, let's start with round of applause. 박수. We start our lecture series 20 times ago. Lecture 1. I said, who is CPTI? What's Cambodia Presbyterian Theological Institute? And I show you building. And I said, it's not building. It's people. You are CPTI. You are the software. Hardware can change, but the excellence in software will make the difference. And we basically cover the book that I wrote for you guys. And in the book, we were trying to cover, out of this book, we try to cover the research and thesis steps because I was requested by Professor Lee of CPTI, just focus on research and writing. So that's what I did. The first lecture and all throughout lectures, my argument is that research paper is an argument. It's not history. It's not description. It's not writing someone else's writing and try to fill 80 pages. It is basically argument. So you have to argue. And we start with the research question, right? We said, what is your research question? That's the most important step. Start and step. Without that foundation, you cannot go anywhere. So don't start researching until you know your question. Don't write out many questions. You have to write the primary question, the number one question, and then the secondary, and the third, and the fourth. So your research question is the most important question. And then what do? You read like crazy. You read, you research. Nowadays, you don't even have to visit libraries because everything that you want to know is in Google Scholar. And so just read Google Scholar, identify the books first, any topic, and I have demonstrated to you, any topic that people are interested, I could find tens of thousands of books on the topic, any topic. And so all your research would actually have access to that. And I said that there are two kinds of airplanes. Royal Cambodian Air Force plane, Chinese, Cambodian Angkor airline. So if you want to fly this, you go to different school. Because if you learn how to fly Royal Cambodian Air Force jet, then you could fly Cambodian Angkor commercial airline. But if you only learn how to fly commercial airline, you won't be able to fly the Royal Cambodian Air Force. And so why? Because what kind of pilot are you? I said, you are the jet pilots. It's kind of cool. Okay, so I said that if you just want to, be a nice pastor and serve at Kampong Spu, Kampong Batambang, Kampong Chnang, and just be a pastor, serve the Lord, be a good local pastor, grow your church, take care of sheep, and retire at age 80 and die and go to heaven, then you don't have to learn. You don't have to come here. You don't have to learn how to fly jet, right? But I think God has a different calling in your life right now. Being a THM, trying to write a thesis and trying to research, your calling is a little different. So, well, let's live up to that expectation. For example, an average pastor in Cambodia will take a research like this and they'll be fine. Oh, this is great. We are doing research in Cambodia. Okay, well, that's good. But uh, we are looking at same national Cambodian church statistic, MK 2021, which will end this year, by the way. Lot of money has been raised, and then MK 2021 received lot of money, and they did wonderful research. But what about number of Christians decreasing? What are we doing anything about that? We're not. So um, it's one thing to receive a lot of money and do research, but if it's not helping anybody, why do we do it? So I think your research, it will not just so that you could finish your paper, so you could get a master thesis and then try to teach somewhere. It's waste of time, you know. You really want to do good research and learn how to do research. So after this research is done, that you could do your PhD, you could do your second research or your third research or any subject that you put your heart to, that you do a solid research so that you're not going to be satisfied with just average answer to a question. Remember I said that, show you yesterday that happiness index research, Cambodia ranked 103rd. Well, who decides Cambodia is not happy? Why the world decides that Cambodia people are not happy, right? Okay, if I tell you that name me 100 countries, and then you won't be able to name me 100 countries. You don't even know 100 countries. And yet the world says that Cambodians are 103rd happiest country in the world. Well, I think spiritual leaders of Cambodia should take that kind of research and rebuttal, argue that that's not true. Cambodia people are happy no matter what you say. Well, how do you define happiness? You need to define happiness differently than money, wealth, health. So, okay. So, and then I said that most important thing is direction of your paper. You could either do ID, right? Inductive reasoning by observing data. That's ID way. Or DT, deductive, that starts with theory. Okay? And most of you still do not know what it is. So most of you write a proposal and not really certain. Some of you said that there's only one data and one book, but I want to do theory based. See, it did already tell me that you have not really understood this concept. Okay, if there's no theory, you cannot do DT. But most of you wanted to do DT. Maybe you thought it would be easier to do it that way. It's not, because if it's not ID or DT, if you're not sure, then you won't be able to do the research, period. Right? So it's important. It's like saying that I want to go Siem Reap from Phnom Penh, and then you start driving south. If you're driving south from Phnom Penh, you're going to end up at Saigon, not Siem Reap. So the direction of your research is important. So when you keep on driving south and insist, I'm going to go Siem Reap, I'm going to go Siem Reap, you could say that all your life, but you're going to end up at Saigon, not Siem Reap, right? So know the direction of your research. Is it inductive or is it deductive? If you don't know, don't start research yet. You have to know. And we're going to talk about that. And then while you're doing research, know your core argument. What's your principal argument? I told you at the beginning, research, paper, thesis, master, PhD, all of it is an argument. It's not a book. If you want to write a book, don't do research. You could just write a book. I could write a book a week. I could write a book a week. I could write a book a month. I don't have to do any research. Well, I like living in Cambodia because, and then write a book. Oh, I think Cambodia people are happy because, you know, I met some tuk-tuk driver. He was happy. So I think Cambodia's happy. Well, write a book. But it won't be a research paper, right? In order to do research paper, then I have to research. Am I going to survey? Am I going to go a lot of places? Am I going to, if I'm going to measure the tuk-tuk drivers' happiness in Cambodia, then I would designate 10 cities or 10 major locations. And then I'm going to do 20 tuk-tuk ride on each city. And then out of the data, I'm going to come up, right? It will be DI. It will be, I'm sorry, ID. It will be inductive database research. And then I'm going to write a book. Tuk-tuk driver in Cambodia are the happiest people on earth. Okay? So that's one way to do research. But what's your core argument? If you don't know your core argument, nobody will know. So your core argument has to come back. So it's the engine that draws your chapter 1. You write that in chapter 1, you write that in chapter 2, you write that in chapter 3, write that in conclusion. So every chapter you have to write your core argument, central argument. That's what it means. Most important argument. Okay. So if you don't know what your core argument in each chapter, you don't have a research question because your core argument is trying to answer your research question. So how do you see yourself as a Christian leader in Cambodia? I did the jet, right? Jet pilot was one of them. But what about this one? I invented this. There are two kinds of riders, right? Two kinds of rider. There's a commuter rider who drives moto. Do you see moto here? Yes? Go like this if you see moto, commuter. Oh, you don't see anything on the screen? You see it? And there's adventure rider. You don't see it? Huh. What do you see? Do you read two kinds of rider in the screen? Yes? No? Oh, what do you see then? Someone turn on the speaker and then talk to me. Someone get the microphone on. What do you see on the screen? Because I see two kinds of rider right now. What do you see? What do you see? Please, someone talk to me. Tarot, what do you see?
I can't see, Professor. Just ground.
Ground. Really?
I cannot see your PowerPoint.
Okay, that's not good.
Me too.
Okay, let me exit then. So you didn't, what was, it's terrible. So now someone should have told me. Okay, so what did you see then? Did you see the front, the clapping part? Okay. Let me share screen again.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So you see my computer. What do you see now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Two
you
kinds
talk?
of writer?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Because what happens is that when people go in and out, in and out, in and out like that, so usually I lock the door, but some of you came so late, I have to admit you, and then it goes out. So now you see two kinds of writer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. That's the motto of all the writers, friends. So this is my bike, and this is how I travel. We went across Mexico. We did a long journey together. In order to do a long journey, we would actually go to camp. We sleep outside, start the campfire, and eat all kinds of Mexican food. And we spent, I think, 10 days together. Mexico is a beautiful place. No one's at the beach, not like Kampong Som. Kampong Som full of people. No one there. And we eat lobster like this. My goodness.
Lobster.
It's not a big shrimp.
Hungry.
Wow. So beautiful.
Sunset. And now my friends are planning 5,000 mile journey. What is 5,000 miles? 5,000 miles.
Wow.
5,000 mile. Well, from Phnom Penh to Battambang is 174 miles.
Mm.
What
Wow.
does 5,000 mile look like? From Phnom Penh to Moscow, Russia. That's 5,000 miles. So my friends are planning a motorcycle ride from Phnom Penh to Russia, that kind of distance. So it's crazy. The reason that they're training is because eventually they're going to travel to Africa and they're going to ride motorcycle in Africa. They're inviting me to ride motorcycle in Africa together. I said, no, thank you. I don't want to die. So there are two kinds of rider, commuter rider or adventure rider, right? What do you want to be? What do you want to be?
Adventure rider.
Adventure rider.
Amen. Because when you learn to be adventure rider, you could be a commuter rider all day long. But if you only learn how to be commuter rider, you die as an adventure rider. So just like the jet pilot versus commercial airline, right? Seeing yourself as God sees you, that's the most important thing. Not what others say you are, but who God says you are, right? And you see yourself as bigger than who you think you are. Well, so that leads us to decide. This is the question. How Christian can get the church permission from Cambodian government? Is it important to register the church? Why? Can a missionary or foreigner to become a church leader, spiritual? Does Cambodia need a law for religion? Why do you need to learn how to register the church building, a place which Christians meeting? Now, what's the problem with these questions? You're asking too many questions. What is the primary question? What is the central question? Okay. So Visai, what is your central question? Talk to me, Visai. Well, you got to unmute yourself.
Cô với sao một tầm lấy mà.
Visai. Okay. Maybe he cannot unmute himself. Ah, a lot of technical problem today. Well, some of you, what do you think is his primary question? Okay, do I have to name people again? How come Kakada is going in and out like 10 times? Gosh. Is it ID quality research or TD quality? What is the primary question? Decide. What is the primary question here? Okay, I need to ask people now. I don't know why, Tarot, you're right below me in my screen. So Tarot, tell me, what do you think is the primary question of Visai? Tarot, can you speak? You cannot speak. Everybody's muted.
Professor,
Yeah.
so we mute. After that, we can unmute themselves. You, the host, can mute.
Did I muted everybody? Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay, pause and record meeting. No. Okay, let me.
Everyone, you can leave and come in again.
Okay, this is really weird. Okay, so let me stop share.
Cô sai là cô anh chênh hai trôi mà anh một tầm lấy bán này.
Thầy cũng bật tiết cho tiết này.
I don't think I could unmute. You guys are not muted according to my screen.
Oh, I can.
Now I could hear everybody. That's good.
Yeah.
Unmute again.
So if you unmute and you cannot come back.
Teacher, Hong Sang unmute.
Besides,
Left
you speak now.
Come in again. Okay.
Please leave and
we're waiting for you.
Okay. There I go.
whoever
Now my house electric was cut off. Maybe internet will go. My first question is how Christian can get the church permission from Cambodian government. This is my main topic with the first question.
So can you see the screen now? Your question.
Yeah. The first one.
First, the primary question.
Yeah. The first, how Christian can got the church permission from Indian government.
Okay. That does not look like a research question though. Why do you need to write a master thesis on how to get a permission from Cambodian government? You could just read a manual. Are you saying that, so are you arguing? How do you argue how to get a church permission from Cambodian government? How do you make that into argument? I told you research and thesis is argument, not how, manual. So you have to argue. Are you saying that it is important for Cambodian church to get permission from government? Argue for or against. So your research question should be, why do we need church permission from Cambodian government? Or why we don't need permission from government, right? So when you ask how Christian can get the church permission from Cambodian government, that's not a research question. It's a description of a manual. You want to give to Cambodian pastors, young pastor, here's how you can get a church permission from Cambodian government. But that's not thesis. You don't need to write 80 pages of it. I could do that in 1 page. Go to government office, register and pay a certain amount, then you get a permission, right? So as I said, most important thing is it a research question? Is it, so for example then, is it inductive database quality research, or is it deductive theory-based research? See, you don't have answer to that question is because the whole thing is not based on research. It is based on just, I think you want to write something. You have certain things in mind. I think you're trying to say that it is important for church to register, right?
Yeah.
If that's your position, then you got to turn that into research, not just make a statement. Because you cannot say that it is important to register as a church. Why? Well, maybe the second question is more, right? Or you have to say, the second question, is it important register church? Why? So you should, instead of saying that, you should just say, why is it important to register the church? Maybe that is a research question. And so what was that, the following question? Can a missionary or foreigner to become a church leader? Question mark. Why is that a research question? Are you saying that foreigner should not be a missionary, spiritual leader? Or are they playing a spiritual leader that is not necessarily, so this is kind of like, you talk about the permission of church, you talk about foreigner being a spiritual leader, right? And you talk about Cambodia need a law for religion. So it's too much. Once again, like saying, you have to write 1,000 pages on this. So you need to narrow it down to just one. So what do you think what is that you want to do in your mind?
I think each Cambodian church they don't know or about how to got the church permission or how to register the church. And I have been talked with the officer uh, why is it important to register the church? So most of leader they want to register their church, but they still afraid or fear about when we got the church mission, the governor will control, or we think we have to make a report to them. And for our mission, church mission in Cambodia, like a missionary, we just register with NGO or any organization, and the same way they can share the gospel. So my research, I want to let the church leader learn how, why is it important to register the church. We know that now Cambodia don't have a region religious law. So the Ministry of Religion and Culture, they try to make a kind of law to control every religion. So I want to get any information and show to the, spread to the Christian leader that when we register the church to the governor is important. The governor can protect us or any trade, because nowadays the people like to submit their life to the law of their own country. So if we just use the fake information, like we just
Okay, so I agree with you. So I think your heart is about wanting Cambodian churches to register with the government. So then
Yeah.
I think all this other question about can missionary, foreigner become a spiritual leader or not, I don't know how that is important to that question. Registering church and foreigners becoming a spiritual leader has nothing to do with it. So you should take that out. Just talk about Cambodian church abiding by the law, regardless of the risk of losing it to the government. And so if you are arguing that some people argue that I don't want to register because when I register as a church to Cambodian government see any religious organization as a church would actually take it away if they want to, because it belongs to government. That's one of the reasons they don't register. So then you really have to do some case study or do some research on people why they don't want to register. So for example, a lot of churches that I talk to, Korean missionaries, they don't register as a church. They register as a school, because as a school, then you could register as an NGO. But if it's a church, Cambodian government says the religion belongs to the government. Just like all the Buddhist temple belong to the government, all the Christian churches will belong to the government. So they could come and say that this belongs to us, get out, and government has control. That's why a lot of missionaries do not register churches as a church, but as a school, like children's school or after school, but meet there on Sunday. So on Sunday, and then the government comes and said, is this a church or not? They said, no, it's a children's school, but church is borrowing and they give us money. And so it happened over and over again, because a lot of the churches or some other missionary who said, okay, it's a church, the government took over and kicked everybody out. So there are cases like that. So that's why they're not registering. So if you're saying, insisting, even that could happen, but it's important that government owns the church. If that's your position, you have to do research. You cannot just say that one guy told me that it's important. You know, only thing you're saying is, I talked to some guy, government official, has said it's important that church register. That's not a research. So you could preach that on Sunday, but don't present it as an 80-page thesis. So you need to come up with a research question. Is it the important? It is. Why is it important for Cambodian church to register as a church? This is when you register, it is good. When you don't register, this is a good and the bad, and then you conclude. So what you have to do is, we cannot go back. So you have to decide: is this inductive database research? Are you going to go meet a lot of these churches and interview? Or are you going to find at least 10 books on this issue? And if you say that, oh, I'm going to be deductive theory based, then you still haven't figured out what I'm talking about. You cannot do deductive theory based research in Cambodia because no one has written books about Cambodian church registration. At this stage, only thing you can do is do inductive database, because you like to go and meet, you know, a church planted by Cambodian people without missionaries' help, and talk to a church that planted. I would talk to CPTI church. CPTI planted 150 churches, so-called. Are they registered? How come they are not registered? Why is it important they need to be registered? And then build your case and write. Then have your primary research question. Based on CTPI 150 churches, I found out that it is important for CPTI church to register to the government, although we may lose the building to them someday. So what? We need to go by the law. Otherwise, we'll always be marginalized, or we become always secondary. So whatever your argument is, I'm not saying you're right, and I'm not saying you're wrong. You need to make it into a research, not just, I want this. Why do you want it? Is it based on data, or it's just your desire? You know, I want every church to become financially independent, but that's what I want. But 2,650 churches, 5 churches are financially independent. So what I want and what the reality, the data is different. So the researcher must go and do the research. And that's why the research is there. So you need to really come up with the core issue. So what is your core argument? It's most critical here. That's why you don't need to bring spiritual leader, foreigners. Do we need a law in religion? This is all secondary. Your core argument is we need to register church. And your context is, are you talking about CPTI church? Are you talking about Baptist church? Are you talking about Methodist church? So you need to talk about what churches are you talking about, right? Are you talking about Kamai church that has 5 people, you know? So 2,650 church, thousands of churches are just family, the pastor and uncle and less than 5 adults in the church. So why would they have to register as a church? It's just a small group, right? And so then you need to argue. What is your core argument? What are you trying to say? So are you saying that even 5 people church should register as a church and pay $1,000 registration fee that government requires? How much is the registration fee? Area to area is different. Kampong Cham require 1,000. Battambang 700. Phnom Penh 2,000. I don't know, but you need to research that, and then you need to say, even if it costs 500, even if it costs 1,000, 5-member church should register because this is my argument. That's my core argument. So turn that into argument. Don't turn it into, I wish every church in Cambodia would register because I like, then that's not research. Okay, so you need to come up with the core argument. Any questions? Okay, nobody has questions, so let's take a break. Let's maybe that next time we all join, it will do better. We had too many technical problems today, this first session. So let's regroup at 1:35 sharp. Right, guys, take a break. We'll come back.
Yeah.
1:35.